Welcome, everybody. Starting to see some folks joining the session with us tonight. It's really awesome to have you here. Welcome to another session of our Becoming series. And this is where we come together to learn about careers in energy efficiency. This series is sponsored by two really great partners. We've got Natural Resources Canada and Electricity Human Resources Canada. Both sponsors are really key. They're leaders in developing the Canadian energy efficiency workforce, and we couldn't do any of this without them. Each month in our Becoming series, we're going to meet a different leader in the sector, hear their story about how they got started, what skills are important for their role, and any advice that they might have for someone looking to follow in their footsteps. So to kick things off tonight in the chat, I'd really love to hear from anyone who wants to share where they're at in their own career. Are you a student right now? Are you a recent graduate, maybe mid-career or between careers? I think it's really helpful when we get to know each other a little bit before we start these events and get a sense of what we're all hoping to get out of our time together. So if anyone is brave enough to share, would definitely love to hear where people are at. We are going to be recording tonight's event. We record all of our Becoming sessions, so you'll be able to go back and review if there's anything that you miss. And we have a hard cutoff time of 5:45 Eastern, so we just have 45 minutes together tonight. If you have any questions that come up during the presentation, feel free to put them in the Q&A box, and we will have question time at the end of Chinyere's presentation. You can also raise your hand during the Q&A section, and I can unmute you, and you can ask your question directly out loud. We're all very friendly here, so it's definitely a great space to ask those questions and learn more. And if you put questions in the chat, I'll try to catch them, but the best place to make sure that your question does definitely get answered is to use the Q&A tool. So this week's speaker is Chinyere Johnson. Chinyere joined EllisDon in early 2021 as an assistant project manager with the Toronto Building Group Department. She has over 8 years of industrial, commercial, institutional construction project management experience. And in her previous roles, she's managed construction project delivery from initiating to closing for new construction and in rehabilitation projects. I don't want to say too much more. I am just going to pass it over to you to take it away and share all of your knowledge with everyone.
Thank you, Kirstin. So I'm just going to pull up my notes so that I share everything that I want to say. So as Kirstin told us, my name is Chinyere Johnson, and today our talk is going to be very simple, non-technical, and it's going to talk about a little bit about me. I'm going to talk about the field of construction project management, as well as I'm going to give some advice on if you are just interested in this field, or if you are transitioning from another field, or you're trying to make up your mind. And my advice would go for basically any type of field, because I'm not only going to give specific advice to construction project management, but it can apply to other areas as well. So a little bit about me. I am a PMP certified project manager. And for those who don't know, PMP stands for Project Management Professional. And that's a designation that is awarded by the Project Management Institute for anyone who shows a level of competence in project management. Now, project management is applied to a varying number of fields. And so there's IT project management, there's construction project management, which I'm employed in. And there's also many other types of project management. So for anyone who does not know, a project is a unique endeavor undertaken in order to achieve a specific objective. So for example, if you plan your best friend's wedding, that's a project. Think of the most basic, simple things you do on a daily basis. Those are likely projects. And it's easy to think about those kinds of things to apply to projects, because that's what simplifies project management. You do it every single day. I also hold a LEED designation, and LEED stands for Leadership in Energy and Environmental Design. And that's a credential awarded by the United States Green Building Council. And it's a green building rating system so that you understand how buildings are rated relative to the environmental responsibility. So they consider things like construction waste, right down to when the building is used and how it is maintained. So there's PMP and there's LEED. There are a number of other designations that can be used in project management as well, that I plan to pursue at some point, but those can give you an idea of what exists. I also have experience in architecture. For 2 years, I worked as an intern architect, and I transitioned my career from architecture to construction project management, where I work right now. So the first part of our talk, that was my introduction. The first part of our talk will be about my beginnings. And you'll learn a little bit about me personally and professionally. So my dad was a weekend warrior, and he would do home renovation projects. And I would volunteer of all of my 3 siblings to help him around the house. And that's what spurred my interest in the field. He taught me how to do things right the first time around. And that is particularly applicable now that I work in construction project management, where there are lasting effects of, expected for materials and products. And so that's a philosophy that I took from my dad that I do to this day. I wanted to be a fine artist, so I loved painting. And my mom told me that I may not make such a good living, so I should probably consider a different profession. So I chose to marry 2 things that I liked. I was really good at technical drawing, and I liked art. Whether I was good or not, I don't know, that's debatable. But I decided to merge those 2, and I went on to do a bachelor's degree in architecture. And I enjoyed that program. And during that program, I was able to be exposed to summer research programs, where I did one at MIT, where I learned about fabrication, and I joined the digital design and fabrication lab as part of the architecture department there. So I learned more about architecture from a hands-on perspective versus only drawings, which is what I was exposed to in my undergraduate degree. After I graduated in architecture, I moved on and worked for 2 years as an intern architect. So my experience in undergraduate and working were 2 different, very different experiences for me. And I did not really like the working environment as an intern architect. So I decided to switch to something that I would probably want to see myself doing for the rest of my life. So I made a career switch, and I chose to go with construction project management. So for 7 years, I worked for the government, where I did management of community centers, hospitals, schools, institutional projects. And I really, really liked that. So I said I would stick to this field because this is something that I could see myself doing for the rest of my life. And I migrated to Canada, actually, after working for the government, because I wanted to see what else is out there. I knew no one. But I networked my way to my job at EllisDon now. So if there's anyone out there who needs encouragement, you want to transition to the field of construction project management, but you don't know where to begin, I will give you some breadcrumbs to help you on your trail to manage your way to getting that dream job that you want. So I started off when I first arrived in Canada at Humber College, where I did a certificate program in engineering skills enhancement. And my son at the time was only 10 weeks old, but I was ready to get back out, go to work, and make use of my skills. I had a really good support system. Well, I have my husband, and he essentially allowed, for that support so that I could go to school. So I did Humber College, and I thought that that would be the place where I would, get my job and move on from there into corporate, project management. But it didn't work out that way for me. After Humber College, I went on to George Brown College, and I did a certificate in building officials fundamentals. So I thought that because of my previous role working for the government, where I managed institutional work, that I would be well suited for being a building inspector, which is essentially what the program at George Brown was about. Unfortunately, I did not get a job out of that either, but I did essentially stick to my goal. And that's one thing that I want to encourage other people. Like, once you have your goal, you might meander your way around, but just stay focused, and every step that you take towards your goal counts for something. Even if it feels like a step back, it counts for something. And so I was able to hone my resume at Humber College. I was able to speak to my skills, which I guess I got into a bit of a slump when, you work for so long, for 7 years, and you don't really need a resume. You don't need to beef up your resume. You don't need to, because you have a job. And the only reason why you have a resume is to get a job. And I thought that maybe my skills needed polishing and stuff. And so that's why I chose to go to Humber College and chose to go to George Brown. So my advice in that regard would be to continue to look forward to what is to come, because setbacks can mean something. Perceived setbacks, I should say, can mean something to your process. Okay, so that's a little bit about me. I actually joined the field of construction project management in EllisDon due to just attending, another one of those programs at the Rotman School of Management. And during that program, I was able to use all the information that I gained before at Humber College, at George Brown College, and from my work experience to inform my interview experience, my resume. So I was able to speak to my skills better than, because I had all that practice, I was able to speak to my skills better than I even expected. So we'll move on to what construction project management is about. Essentially, in construction project management, you are, yourself, or the agency you represent, are effectively the managers of the project schedule, the cost, the project quality. There's also safety, which is a big aspect of construction. You manage the scope, you manage the overall function of the project as well. Some of the responsibilities that you can expect to perform as a construction project manager include stakeholder management, and stakeholders would be people who have impact, influence, and interest in the project. So it can mean the person who finances the project, right through to the person who uses the building at the end of the day. You have to know how to report to these stakeholders. Do some people prefer emails, early morning meetings? Do they prefer no phone calls? Are they in person? So you have to understand how to communicate with people so that you get the best out of them. You also plan projects. So anything that has to do with how the money is going to be spent, or where the money is going to be allocated. Well, that's the same thing, how the money is going to be allocated. That's something that you manage as well. And then in projects, change management is something that happens because maybe the financier may want to save some money in one area, so they ask you to change some material, or maybe the end users decide that they want to have a different change of scope, and they want to suggest something. So change management is something that you have to track in order to keep the progress of the project going appropriately. Then there's also scheduling. Depending on what type of company you work for or want to work for, scheduling is also likely to be part of your role as a project manager. At EllisDon, where I work, we have a scheduling department. So there are other people who do scheduling and furnish us with the project schedules. There's also estimating. You also sometimes have to estimate cost. You have to estimate how long it will take to do something. So that's time. And those are two key skills that you will either need to brush up on or get familiar with: scheduling and estimating, because they're integral to the project management position. Billing is also important because when trades, the subcontractors that you hire, when they do the work, they have to provide documentation proving this is evidence of how they have a breakdown of how they have essentially spent the money, and then you pay them according to the contractual obligations. Sometimes as well, procurement might be part of your role, and procurement could mean anything from procuring services or procuring material. So it depends on how your contract is drawn up. Sometimes you have to do both of them. Sometimes you have to do one, or sometimes none, because that's something I learned as part of my previous role that I don't do now, but it helps to understand the procurement process as well. And then there's quality, because you need a rubric by which to measure the work that the contractor, the subcontractors have done. And it's not just a case of, well, I did the work, here you go, here are your keys. No, you need a system, a quality management system by which to measure, okay, this is the work that you have done, the output, and these are the criteria that needed to be met. Have they been met? Okay, yes, then the project is successful. And then you close out the project at the end, where you receive from the subcontractors documentation on operations and maintenance of how the systems, the building system should be run, things that the facilities management team will now adopt in order to continue to run the building. I will say that one of the major things that you will do as a construction project manager is communicate. And so if you need to brush up on your public speaking skills, if you need to brush up on business relationship skills, I don't know, something that has to do with how you communicate in a business setting, that will be really helpful as well, because a lot of what you do is communicate with other people, because people bring the money to finance the jobs, and people do the work that is financed. So you essentially have to be able to speak to many different categories of people. In my current role, a typical day can look like reviewing of shop drawings, and shop drawings are part of the quality management process, where the sub-trades send in drawings and product data in order to let us know that these are the things that they're going to incorporate into the building. Because it's not just a matter of, well, this is what I want to do and this is how I'm going to do it. You have to use what is specified in the construction documents. And so shop drawing review is something I do. I look at the drawing and I say, okay, based on the specifications that we've been provided by the architectural team or the mechanical team or different consultants, then I have to review and say that, okay, this is essentially good, and I can pass it on to the consultants for their review and approval, or you need to revise the submission because it does not meet the criteria. So there are a lot of checks and balances built into the system in order to have a robust process at the end of the day. There's also, like I said, managing relationships. So I speak to many different people. I go to many, many meetings, sometimes on a daily basis. And there's also site walks. So what I do is basically administrative. It's in the office, but there are some times when I do get to go out and walk the site and see, what the paperwork that I've, done has led to on the site, which is really the best part of it for me, seeing it come alive. There's also managing changes, which I talked about. There's a tracking system that has to be very airtight so that you are able to identify and account for changes that are made to the project, because There are changes sometimes to project scope or the schedule, and you have to be able to account for those and track them properly. There's also the last thing I'll talk about in terms of my day would be RFIs, requests for information. And sometimes the drawings don't give a holistic picture, or there are site conditions that maybe excavation was done and nobody knew that there was a tunnel underground. And so we need to ask the consultants, as the project managers, we need to liaise with the consultants and ask them, what's the best thing to do here? What do you suggest? What are your recommendations? What is the way forward? And so those are RFIs that we get from questions from the trades. Okay, so the reason why I wanted to be part of the construction management field is that I get to see things come alive. Like it moves from just, the paper, which in my day, architectural drawings was just paper. And I see it in 3D, and that to me is the coolest thing. And according to USGBC, which I mentioned before, buildings account for 40% of greenhouse gas emissions. So I wanted to just make my little, signature, my stamp, and contribute to the field in terms of energy efficiency. And this project that I'm assigned to has the largest geothermal exchange field in Canada, I'm told, where it uses geothermal energy to offset the energy required for heating of the buildings and electricity use versus using fossil fuels. So I'm very, very happy to be part of this project. It allowed me to be exposed to geothermal, the idea of geothermal energy, which I never encountered before. So that's something that I'm very excited by. And there is a category in LEED actually that concerns construction activity, pollution prevention. And in there, you manage the erosion and sedimentation control. And you have to prove that as part of your building's rating system, that part of the construction activity is not going to be hurting the environment. There's also a category for construction and demolition waste management. So are some of the building materials going to be recovered, recycled, or reused? And that's basically the field in a nutshell, the field of construction project management. The last thing I will talk about is my advice if you're interested in entering this field, or any field, like I said. These are practical ways that you can become a construction project manager. The three things that I will speak to are people, perspectives, and project. They could have been any three things, but these are the things that I relate to the most. So in terms of people, what has helped me is realizing that relationships come first. Like I said, people finance projects. People do the work. Therefore, you need to have good relationships. You need to understand how to have healthy relationships. And I want to make a plug for networking because, like I said, that's how I got my job at EllisDon. And networking is not only about a parasitic relationship. Don't only try to, get something out of someone. Recognize that you have value as well, and you can share in that relationship just as you would in any other relationship. It's not only about a LinkedIn message because you want a job from someone. Yes, you want a job, but share about yourself as well. Make the relationship symbiotic instead of you just want something from someone. Build genuine relationships and value yourself enough to share and to want to give of your diversity, because chances are you will have a different, you might have a different opinion from others, and you can bring that to the table as well. Also, think about events, attend events and conferences. And I will say that this has helped me a long way, because when I first came to Canada, I joined the Toronto Community Benefits Network just from a Google search of construction in Canada, and that association came up. You will find many other associations that you might be well suited to you. Look up, some people who you might be interested in, having a chat with. And not everyone will necessarily have the time to accommodate a conversation with you, but reach out. Do the uncomfortable thing sometimes. This is not easy standing here, but I'm here because I want to share with you that, like, I did it. The last thing I want to talk about in terms of people is to tell people that you're looking for a job, because chances are that whoever you tell, they might know someone who knows someone who knows someone. And I'm not saying anything revolutionary or there's no rocket science to it. It's just things that I want to continue to have you think about as you, think about transitioning to construction project management, or as you think about as you enter construction project management. So the next thing I would talk about is perspectives. I want to use the analogy of a highway, right? So if you've landed a job, or that's a lot of work. Landing a job is a lot of work. Let's say you've done the networking, you've gotten the job. When you are on the on-ramp to the highway and you get onto the highway, you don't stop, right? When you land the job, don't stop. Keep growing, continue to grow and commit to grow with the company. And even the industry, even if the company may not be a right fit. And I can't stress enough the fact that your strength of character is going to follow you wherever you go. So people are going to remember you for your authenticity. Be honest, and it will take you a long way. The last thing I want to touch on is the project. So these are project-related skills that I think you should have. So any combination of skills will be valuable to the right employer. I genuinely believe that, because I don't think that only PMP and only lead and only those are the only designations that will get you your foot in the door. There are a combination of skills that many different employers would want to hear from by inviting you for an interview. So I would suggest that you learn how to craft your story. And that makes all the difference, how you craft your story. It doesn't matter if you come from a field outside or if you come from something very closely related. In an interview, and I consider any interaction with anyone an interview, whether you're in an elevator or you're standing in line, buying fast food or whatever. I strongly believe that any interaction that you have is an interview. You are always speaking to your strengths. You are always, on display. And once you are able to craft your story and weave it together in a way that, makes the best version of you, I think that's what employers would gravitate to. So project management courses specifically would make sense. Construction related courses would make sense as well. And one thing that I did that I would advise you to do as well would be to look for job descriptions that in the field that you want to go into. You will see after 10, 12, 20 job descriptions, you will see very similar words being used in terms of technical jargon, in terms of acronyms, in terms of skill sets that are required. And you can pattern your resume after those things. Well, of course, you have to pursue them and then put them on your resume, because we talked about authenticity. But the point is that you ought to use those as a guide to where you want to be. And I have found that to be a very good tool in providing guidance for building my resume. Lastly, I want to talk about continuous learning. Do something to add to your resume every so often. So for me, it's every year or so, I want to add something to my resume, whether it's a short course or a certification or something. I want to continue to show that I am learning and I'm genuinely interested in learning. I consider myself a lifelong learner. So in closing, I want to encourage you to be proactive and be patient. Career development is a marathon. It is not a sprint. It is a journey. Sometimes you meander, and sometimes for some people it doesn't happen that way. But if it happens that way to you, just be patient. Everything that you do that counts towards that will get you closer. And I guess a call to action is to do one thing that gets you closer to where you want to be, whether it's in terms of people, connect more authentically, or tell people you're looking for jobs, whether it's in terms of perspectives. Remember that your outlook, your character really does affect what you put forward. And lastly, in terms of projects, shadow someone, see if, someone would mind. Maybe in COVID, it might not be as easy, but when things return to normal, see if someone would be interested in having you shadow them so that you could see what their life is like on a daily basis. And those are essentially my tips, what I think about how you can enter the construction project management field. And I'm now open to questions.
Amazing. Thank you, Chinyere. You've really shared a lot of tips that I think, I wish I had heard this when I was finishing my degree, because there's just so much advice that I think is really helpful to people who are looking for a new job or looking to switch careers. And I'm also so impressed that you moved somewhere new without knowing anybody. I think if anybody in the audience is looking for advice on networking or relationship building, you're probably an expert. So definitely, if anyone has questions, now is the time. So you can put them in the Q&A tool, which I will be watching. You can also raise your hand and I can unmute you. We've got a few questions in here to kick things off. So from Anna Lee, is there anything you wish you learned in school that you think could have better prepared you for your current role?
My current role, let's see. Yes, I think it has to do with networking. Yes, I would absolutely say that, because the school that I went to was very technical. And of course, they prepare you for, skills that you would need in the workforce, like technical drawing and estimating. But if I don't have people skills, then it's very hard to get anything done. It's very hard to encourage other people to, do stuff for you when you delegate. It's very hard to do anything really if you don't have proper people skills. So I really wish that I mean, yes, you have peers, but I would have wanted more of a formal kind of business relationship type training. Yeah.
Yeah, it's such a handy skill and a tough one to learn on your own.
Yes.
Awesome. So Keelan, I see, wants to ask a question. So you should have the chance now to unmute and ask your question out loud.
Hi, I'm currently transitioning between jobs. And I wanted to find out, I'm not good at networking. Are you good at networking? And what are some of the tips and tricks concerning networking you think you've picked up along the way?
Well, I think I'm good at networking. I would say I am good at networking because I learned how to be brave. Honestly, that is the truth, because I had a lot of talk in my head about, don't approach someone because they might reject you, or if someone doesn't answer, my LinkedIn connection request, then maybe that means X and Y about me. And I really learned to be brave and approach people regardless, because you really don't know who is interested in getting to know you. And unless you try, you will never know. So that's one major tip, just go for it. And don't really worry about, you may not say the right thing, or just be authentic. That is also important. Be authentic, and people are people. People will forgive your if you don't have the right words, and if people are genuinely interested in helping you, they will overlook what you think are your barriers.
I love that advice about being authentic. I think it really is so helpful in forming relationships.
Yeah.
Awesome. So a really interesting question here from Krista. Have you encountered any challenges being female in a male-dominated field, and how do you deal with this?
Honestly, I don't let it affect me. I do experience that. For example, so on some of the construction sites I work on, sometimes there are no female restrooms. And I had to lobby for a female restroom because I'm the only woman on site. But even if there are 500 men and it's just me, I need a restroom. So that's a challenge that I had to overcome by, I have to speak up. No one will know that I want a restroom if I don't say something. And provision was not, this is not necessarily in today's time because that has changed. But over in my past, I've experienced, not having that available to me, but being brave to speak up and say something.
And it's so great because if you advocate for it and it's there, then the next woman who comes to the site, it's already there for that person.
That's true. And not only that, but people are also mindful that, oh, maybe next construction site we go to, we should put a female restroom. Simple.
Yeah, that's awesome. So another question related to networking, how do you maintain relationships on LinkedIn? So especially when the first message sent after connecting, maybe they didn't read it or you didn't get a response, is there a way to keep that relationship going?
Well, if there is no response the first time, well, it's kind of hard to bring it back from where there's nothing there. But if there is a response, you try to keep that going. And here's how I do it. I research the person. So I Google them, I ask people about them. But if I'm really interested in you, I will research your family, your whatever. And when the appropriate moment comes, I send you a message. Hey, I saw, today's your birthday, happy birthday. Something that keeps you on their radar because they're not going to be thinking about you other than that. So I look for key things on, social media or things like that. And I celebrate with them. Oh, I saw you got a promotion. That's great. Or something that keeps them thinking about you. Yeah. Or I also ask for advice. And so actually I did ask for advice about one of the, what should I do in terms of developing my career, etc. And somebody actually told me, you should look into lead. You should do lead. And that's what actually spurred me to do it. And when I did it, I reported back to them, oh, I took your advice and I passed. Look at that. Thank you. And we have maintained a relationship because of that, because people want to know that you are investing in yourself and you're not trying to just get, advice, but, you're giving back, you're saying thanks, just continuing to notify them when things happen for you.
Yeah, and I have a question along with this actually. Do you tend to approach these first connections with a specific thing in mind? Like I'm looking for like a meeting with them or I want advice on this, or do you just open the door and see where the conversation goes? What do you think works better?
So if I'm looking for an informal, necessarily want career advice from you, but I think you would be a good connect. I open the door and I see where it goes. If they don't respond, that's fine. I just move on. But if it's a strategic connection and I think that you would add value to my career development with your advice, I ask very pointed questions about what did you think of, I don't know, this conference that went by. Did you, like I saw you spoke at a certain conference, how did you arrive at so-and-so conclusion? And those are things that I think help to open the door and keep the door open. Yeah.
Awesome. We've got a lot of questions coming in, which is awesome. And we only have about
5
minutes left. So if you want to, in the Q&A tool, you can upvote questions with a thumbs up. So that'll give me a sense of which questions you most want to have answered. But we also have, Arlie, it looks like, wants to ask a question through unmuting. So you should have that chance now to unmute.
Hello, and thank you. I am a business project manager. I have a PMP. I'm looking to get into construction and real estate. I am also a real estate investor, so I have done some projects myself. But I was looking at some courses at George Brown, and I just wanted to know which course in particular really helped push you forward in your career.
Which courses at George Brown specifically that I
No,
did?
which course you mentioned lead, you mentioned
Oh, okay.
to Humber, you
Yes.
went to George Brown. Is there any course in particular that the employers preferred?
Yes. So I did construction project management as a master's degree. I didn't even talk about that. That's interesting. Yeah. So I did a master's degree in construction project management, and that's what would have encouraged my employer.
Mhm.
Yeah. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, is there, because the funny thing is I wasn't really thinking about going back to school, but because I do have some skills from
Mhm.
self-learning, but is there anything in particular that really would help? Like I wasn't thinking of going back to school to get my master's in construction,
Right.
but is there like a course, a certification or something that would kind of open the doors to me? Because I know I do have the transferable skills from from being a business PM.
I think certification in like LEED would be a good one, or
Okay.
the well building standard is also a good one. I'm thinking, so anything in, so you can also do short courses, so they don't have to be a master's degree altogether. You can
Right.
do estimating, you can do a 10-week course on even construction project management. George Brown has a short course in that. Anything to do with construction related things, I think would make sense.
Okay.
But
Thank
I
you.
also did my master's degree part-time. So even if it's not something you're interested in full-time, consider part-time. It takes longer, but you eventually get there.
How long is the program? About 2-3 years?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
No problem, Arlie.
Awesome. And Krista also should have the chance now. You can unmute and ask your question.
Hi, okay, so I know that you're Trinidadian, I believe, and so am I. Currently in Trinidad, in between looking for a job right now because I have a degree in engineering. And so, it's a struggle because it's been like over a year now, and with COVID and everything. So you mentioned that you migrated. Do you have any tips on why you chose to migrate and how you went about this? Because I think with the current job climate, maybe that may be an option for me.
So I will say it. I want to answer your question. Send me a message on LinkedIn. Krista, are you there? I'll personalize it just for you because I think the audience may not, necessarily need to hear.
Awesome. Krista, so if you aren't able to find Chinyere on LinkedIn, definitely let me know and we can connect you guys after the call. And oh, it's 2:44. I really want to ask, I'll do one more question because there's so many great questions in the Q&A right now. Let me just bring them up really quick. So we'll start with or end with just a fun one. You mentioned site walks, seeing a project evolve. What's another thing that you really love about your job?
Honestly, the people I work with, oh my goodness, because I am new, I have to learn the EllisDon systems, the EllisDon way. And I'm also new to Canada, so I have to, learn that as well. And then the project that I started is also new to me, geothermal. I'm not experienced in that either, but there is a building going up that I'm experienced in. So it's not like they hired me, to do something I'm not experienced in. But at the same time, I had my learning curve is steep. But the people I work with, oh my goodness, I am very thankful for them because they make my workday very, very manageable. My boss is great. My peers are great. We have a really good rapport, and that really helps my day.
It's so fun working with people that you're excited to see every day. It makes such a difference.
It does.
Awesome. So we're right at 5:45, so I'm going to wrap things up. thank you so much for joining us today, for sharing your story. There's a ton of questions left, so definitely feel free to reach out to either me or Chinyere to ask further questions, connect on LinkedIn, send emails.
Yes, please.
Let's keep these conversations going. Thank you so much for everyone who joined today and shared some of our precious internet attention and time. I know there's so many things going on, so really appreciate everyone who comes out to these. Be sure to join us next month for an evening with Kirstin by Liu. We're going to learn about becoming an energy engineer. And one final thank you to our sponsors, Natural Resources Canada and Electricity Human Resources Canada. So thank you, everyone. Thanks for attending and have a great night.